Well, we will continue to cover the counteroffensive from Ukraine against Russia, and it's good news to a degree. I wish the U.S. wasn't involved there. But joining us now, U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. I know his time is tight. Senator Sullivan, first compliments, kudos. You continue to do such a phenomenal job representing Alaska, and particularly on the foreign affairs and global front. You've taken the lead in so many areas, so thank you. Real quick, looking at your website, you and Mitt, Senator Romney and Joe Manchin King introduced legislation to expose China's defense spending. You meet with Japanese and Korean officials on military cooperation. Fantastic. A lot of things going on in the China-U.S. front. And yet, today, Bill Gates meets with Xi Jinping, and they have a love fest. Bill Gates from Microsoft, formerly. And then Blinken meets with Xi Jinping over the weekend. So would you say you're making headway with your colleagues that are cautionary on China, or what's the feeling there?
Hey, Tom, great to be back on the show, and I'm glad you're doing well. We've been thinking about you. So,
thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, and happy Father's Day to all the listeners. I am literally scrambling to get to the airport in D.C. right now to get home. We've got some weather moving in here, so trying to get home for Father's Day.
Fantastic.
So anyways, I hope everybody has a great Father's Day weekend, all the great Alaska fathers. But you're asking a really, really important question, and I think I'm ringing the alarm bell on the aggressiveness of the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping. Since I got there, many years ago, and some people get it, some people don't. Tom, I think I've mentioned my first deployment as a U.S. Marine was to the Taiwan Strait in 1995 and 96, when that was the last big time the Chinese Communist Party threatened to invade Taiwan. And to his credit, President Clinton sent 2 carrier strike groups and a Marine amphibious ready group. I was young infantry lieutenant on that Marine Amphibious Ready Group, and it was a show of American commitment and resolve, and we need more of that. And what's happening now is that we don't always have it. I mean, I've mentioned this phrase, what I call kowtow capitalism. And the kowtow is actually a Chinese phrase, which means people come and prostrate themselves before the emperor. And in my view, we have too many American companies who still do that, particularly in our financial community, who invest in high-tech artificial intelligence, quantum computing. I've had meetings with American investors who are doing big investing in China in some of the most strategic areas of their economy. And I said, look, I got a huge problem with what you're doing. What you're doing might lead to Marines and sailors and soldiers dying in the Taiwan Strait in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
It's true.
The Chinese try to invade. And it's this huge blind spot that we have with certain Americans. I'm very pro-business and
of course
open markets and, dynamic economy. But I have really been shocked to the extent to which we have American business and financial leaders who continue to seek the Chinese approval to gain access to their market.
Like you say, the kowtow. And Senator Sullivan, I know you can't speak for Bill Gates, but I'm on his email list. I've read his books. He's a, quote, humanitarian. The Uyghurs, Hong Kong, Taiwan. I mean, give me a break. They're not humanitarian. He smiles and, like you say, I'm saying, kisses the ring. I don't get it. I guess it's about the almighty dollar, but I thought he was humanitarian.
I don't get it either.
One question.
Well,
your colleague in Congress, Dan Newhouse, another Dan, Republican from Washington State. You probably know Dan. He has the Prohibition of Agricultural Land for the People's Republic of China Act in the hopper, where they can't buy land in America. Have you ever thought of sponsoring that? Or I know in the state legislature there can be a Senate bill and House bill, or in the U.S. Congress, do you just let one body push a bill?
Well, look, I think these are really important issues, and that's called inbound investment. We have a committee right now in the U.S. government that screens foreign investment in the United States, right? And we tightened that a couple years ago in the Defense Authorization Act. By the way, Tom, we're marking up the defense bill next week here in D.C., so that's going to be really important.
Fantastic.
Got a lot of good stuff in there for Alaska. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, so that's really important. So we've tightened that up in terms of no land near military bases or strategic assets in the United States. Is there an opportunity to tighten it up more? This foreign investment screening provision that we have in federal law already, I think there absolutely is. But here's the other one I'm looking at, and in some ways I hate to do it, but it goes back to this issue I just mentioned. We're also looking at outbound investment. I mean, these big American investment firms using American money, right? Like teachers' pensions and, retirement accounts of Americans. They're investing in, high-end computer chip fabrication and in China and quantum computing in China. And I've literally asked these guys, hey, how much more money do you need, right? Have you ever thought about investing with a sense of American patriotism? So it is a real issue, and I'm glad you're highlighting it.
It's without question. Senator, we got to go to a break. Are you able to stay with us? We have a quick break, and then we come right back, or are you boarding?
Yes.
Okay,
good.
No,
like I said, I'm in the car trying to get to the airport, so
Perfect.
I got time.
Because what I was going to say, as we talk with you and U.S. Senator Sullivan, we'll come back with him. It's very kind of him. First of all, another compliment. He's going to be blushing throughout his drive to the airport. He has one of the best websites, folks. If you want to get information, sullivan.senate.gov, and all of his press releases, all of his actions, his global, national, statewide advocacy and leadership. It's all right there spelled out. The other thing, when we come back, I want his thoughts, and he's listening. U.S. grapples with potential threats from Chinese artificial intelligence. One more lame headline we don't want to see. That's the Wall Street Journal this morning. So we'll talk about that. Rare earth elements that we get from China, and they help us build our military equipment, things that Senator Sullivan's tried to fight against. We'll talk about that when we come back a lot more. Stay with us, Senator Dan Sullivan, right here on the Tom Anderson Show.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Hey, we're back with U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. And as I mentioned, website, Facebook, YouTube, we often post and share. His team is amazing at how they're linking everything. Here's another compliment I'm going to give to Mr. Sullivan. I'm a talk show host, and I'm also in the political communications realm. Many, many lawmakers ramp it up. Guess what? I start getting calls. Can I be on your show? Guess when? Election time. Senator Sullivan's not up for anything. He calls into the show, connects with me and you regularly, weekly, monthly. Elections irrelevant. So thank you for that, Senator. So that's a genuine compliment, because I'm telling you, most people call in at election time. So,
well, I love your show, and part of my job is to try to get the word out and get feedback. And we get good feedback, we get negative feedback, we take it all. But being on your show is really helpful, and thank you for what you're doing. Right, it's a real important public service.
For sure. Well, I'm not going to have you bash anybody because you're working with these. In a sense, they're colleagues, they're bureaucrats. You didn't pick them under President Biden, but the Secretary of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staff, I have watched you. I tell you, you've got brass, you know what's, because if you've ever watched Senator Sullivan, he's a Marine. He goes after them and has, respectfully, I've watched your questions. I'm so unimpressed with them. And again, you don't have to comment, but this is me and probably our audience. But Blinken's going to China. I mentioned Bill Gates today. Does any of this give headway? I know you can't predict, but is the presumption none of that will matter per se, their visits?
Oh, no, I think it matters. And
okay.
I think I think it matters, but it matters how they're doing it, right? My concern with the Blinken visit right now is that if you've watched this administration, they have been begging the Chinese leadership for a meeting. Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken. And when you beg, you show weakness. And look, Tom, you and I were talking at the break, and I think it's really important. Whenever I talk about the Chinese Communist Party, I like to make sure we emphasize it's the leadership, right? Not the people.
Sure.
The people of China are great people with a great history and a great culture. Heck, they're the ones suffering under the dictatorship. They have no freedom. But what the Biden administration is doing right now, in my view, is it's like John Kerry with the Iranians during the Obama administration. All they did was we want a deal, we want a deal, we want to meet with you. And it shows weakness even to the point of appeasement. What they need to do is show strength. And what they're not doing is showing strength where it matters. Let me give you one big example. With regard to our military, the Biden administration, the 3 years that they've been in office now, each time they put forward a budget, they dramatically increase, like the Department of these other federal agencies, and they always cut our military, always. And to me, that is just exactly the kind of weakness that Xi Jinping and Putin like to see. So
yeah, it's true.
That's the problem. I'll give you one other example. We had the Secretary of the Navy visiting Alaska last couple of days. Now, look, I've dealt with this guy a lot. He's a good American, but his priorities are so screwed up. These guys got their climate action plan out a year ago, but they don't have they just gave us, the Armed Services Committee, their 30-year shipbuilding plan. So they're prioritizing their climate change strategy, the U.S. Navy we're talking about, and not shipbuilding. I had a provision last year in the Defense Authorization Act that said the Navy had to have a minimum of 31 amphibious ships.
It's huge. It's so important against China. Folks, you don't realize how big China's Navy is. And this was 3 days ago, Senator Sullivan did this. I read the press release.
Well, and so an amphib ship are the big Navy ships that take the U.S. Marines to deployments and contingencies and battles all over the world. The Marines can't get around without amphib ships. So the Navy wasn't building enough, so we worked with members of the committee, every one of my colleagues on the Armed Services Committee, all the Democrats, all the Republicans, voted for my provision. So what does the Secretary of the Navy do? He shows up at a hearing 2 months ago in front of our committee, the Armed Services Committee, with his shipbuilding plan, and he not once in 30 years hits 31 amphib ships. Not once. So he's just completely violating the law. He's thumbing his nose at the Congress and the American people, and it's outrageous. And yet these guys had their climate action plan done a year ago, the U.S. Navy. So it's the priorities, Tom, and the priorities with this administration
It's out of whack. And you understand, folks, when he says they're prioritizing environment, that's important to study, but the priority should be military infrastructure equipment. Now, I got to segue. We got about 4 minutes left, and Senator Sullivan's heading to the airport to come back home with his family for Father's Day, which is awesome because he's in D.C. so much. I'm sure he misses home. But, there's very few congressional members as smart as you. You're super intelligent. I know you well, and you are thoughtful on air. But I mean, you're an intellect, and you're bright and sharp as a whip. There's another guy like you, and he scares the bleep out of me. And that's Gavin Newsom from California. Not comparing you to other than intelligence. He was on CBS News with Sean Hannity, and they were debating. He, to me, not with his content, but with his prowess and intellect, really beat Sean Hannity. It was like, oh my God, he's so smart. I think he may be the nominee for president. I'm no longer a fan of Trump. I think there's a witch hunt. He didn't commit espionage. I agree with you. But I'm a DeSantis fan. Regardless who you're a fan of or supporting, I'm not going to ask that here. But RNC called us this week and asked to be on the show to talk to Alaskans about banking your vote. That's a new program, but they're saying vote early. Vote when you can, but early. This election, you're not up, but this is a big deal in 2024 for the president, whoever someone votes for on the Republican side. Good people, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, your colleague. It's a big deal, isn't it? Real big, talking about military and strategy.
Oh, it's a big deal. And look, I don't know Gavin Newsom, and I didn't see the interview.
Oh, he's smart.
But all you got to do, all you got to do though, is go to California. My goodness, all these once great American cities are just horrendous with drug use and crime and homelessness. San Francisco's like a war zone, and he used to be mayor there, I think.
Yep, San Francisco.
I think, he could talk a lot, but the end result of all his policies have been,
I agree.
California people are moving out by the tens of thousands.
Agree.
They are voting.
Well, I'm sending you that clip. I'll send it to Ben.
All right,
Senator, I'm begging you. Even more than the Dan Newhouse one on the Chinese land. I'll send you that link too. Please, Dan, watch the one because you'll get he thoughtfully goes back and forth, and I don't like Gavin Newsom, but you got to see it to give your perspective on what the D's think and your colleagues. The last thing
I'll definitely watch it. And look, I think my plan is to support whoever the nominee is right now.
Of course,
but we need to and we got a good group, as you said. There's a whole bunch of good candidates there, younger candidates. Some of my colleagues.
Yep.
But I will tell you this, you just look at the Joe Biden has done to Alaska. I think you've seen that chart that I handed to the president. I was respectful. I was in the Oval Office. But I also said, Mr. President, look at what you're doing to Alaska. You are just crushing us. At the time, it was 45 executive orders and executive actions from this administration singularly focused on Alaska, and every one of them was something to lock up, shut down, reverse a previous administration decision that would give us economic opportunity. I mean, I just handed it to him. I said, respectfully, sir, enough, right? You are crushing my state and my constituents, putting people out of work. It's just wrong. That you're singling out Alaska so much.
It's something I wish Murkowski would have done, but you did it. I'm appreciative. You're tough as nails. I know the public loves you, certainly my audience. Hey, safe travels. We're out of time. Senator Sullivan's flying back to the north, to Alaska. Have a safe flight, and we'll talk to you soon, Dan.
Okay, Tom. Happy Father's Day to you and everybody else listening. I hope everybody has a great weekend. See you back home.
You betcha. That's Senator Dan Sullivan right here on the Tom Anderson Show.